All right, and I will share my screen that way. Okay, can everyone see the screen now? All right, so we're gonna go ahead and review this test 2, which is chapter 3. Okay, chapter 3 basically is all about the finance. All right, so this one you wanna calculate the simple interest and compound interest. So it's about a very practical application in here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead. The good news is you do have a 1 page of the formula for this chapter that you can use for the test, like the simple interest formula and the compound interest formula. Okay, so let me go ahead. If you go to the test here, hold on. All right, if you go to the canvas, you can see there's a little bit page of the formula in here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and review this one. The first one is using the formula for the simple interesting. Okay, so is there any interesting not simple? The answer will be yes. Some interesting will be the compound interest. So you will always have to be very careful to see what kind of interesting it asking for. Okay, the first one here is the simple interesting. So simple interesting, you have a interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. This time T is the number of years. Okay, number of years. So if you have a month, you need to convert it into year. All right. So the first one here is the interest is $48, right? This is not compound. This interest rate is 4% annually, and T here is 6 months. So how much is the principal? Okay, so we can put all the number in. So I here is $48, right? Principal is the unknown, so we're gonna find this one. Okay, interest rate is 4%. 4%, you need to convert it into decimal point. All right, so this is 4 over 100 or 0.04. So you're gonna times 0.04. And then T here is 6 months, right? 6 months, you will need to use 1 year is 12 months. Okay, and the months cancel out. So you're gonna have a 6 over 12 year, or just this one will be 0.5 year, half year, right? You don't really have to go through all this procedure, but you know 6 months is a half year, so this will be times 0.5. Okay, and then we can go ahead calculate this one. So this will be multiply, this will be 4 times 5 will be 20, right? You're gonna have 1, 2, 3 decimal point. So you're gonna have a 1, 2, 3 decimal points. So you have 0, you can get rid of the last zeros in here. All right, so 0.02 P will equal to 48, right? And then you're gonna divide by both sides by 0.02. And then this will give you the principal P, right? And then this divided by 0.2, you can see I will need to add 2 decimal point to get rid of this decimal point, add 20, multiply 100, top and down, right? And then so this will be 2400. All right, so that is $2,400. So if you put a $2,400 in a simple interest rate, 4% per year for half year, right? 6 months is a half year. You're gonna get a $48 of the interest. Okay, so you need to look at which one you're looking for. This time we are looking for the principal, right? So you will need to find the principal in here. Okay, any questions? All right, so that is how we find the that's how we find the this one in the simple interest in here. Okay. And again, like I said, you will have a little bit formula for this one, okay? For the chapter 3, especially chapter 3, the finance. Second one right here is how much interest will you have to pay for a credit card balance is $786. That is 1 month overdue. Okay, if the company charges 18% annual rate. All right, so how much you have to pay? This is very critical, right? So if you have a credit card, all right, and that is the interest rate they charge, right? The company charge. So how much you have to pay just for 1 month? Okay. All right. So this one actually is still the simple interest. Page 1, not here. All right, so that's still a simple interest for just 1 month. So we know I is equal to PRT. Okay, that's simple interest. So right now, this 786 is the principal. Okay, and the interest rate is 18%. So divide by 100. So that's 0.08, right? And then you overdue for 1 month. So 1 month you need to convert it into year. So how do you convert it into year? You use 1 year is equal to 12 months. Okay, so this is 1/12, that one. And then you can just use the calculator to combine them all together, right? So you can go ahead using the calculator. Let's go ahead. See, where's my calculator? All right, so this is a simple calculator. Yeah, that simple one will work. Okay. We have a 786 times 0.18, right? You can multiply first, and then you divide 12, and then just keep 2 decimal points, right? So this will giving you 11.79. All right. So that means if you just borrow, if your credit card balance is only $786, but you just pass due for 1 month, you're gonna have to pay $11.79 on the interest. All right. So now you can go to calculate it. You can go to calculate if you overdue for 2 months or 3 months, right? So you're gonna be much more that way. Okay. All right. So that's how you calculate this one in here. Number 3, given the rate of per compound period, find the R. All right. So this one telling you actually you're gonna it's a compounding period. Okay. Find the the annual rate in here. All right, so let me show you one of the formula you can have in here. Let's see. Okay, let me go ahead and log into the course. I want to show you where do you find the page of the formula. Okay, so if you go to the module. All right, and then you will see the formula sheet in here. Okay, so you will have this formula sheet, the finance formula sheet. All right, so look at this one right here. You can print out this one, this page. Okay, you can print out this page of the formula sheet. So you will be able to do that on the test. And this the good news with this page, it also tells you this is the simple interest rate formula, right? If you just want to find a simple interest in I, you use PRT. If you want to find the total amount after certain years, you will need to use this formula, right? The total amount A here is equal to the principal times the parenthesis 1 plus RT, right? So basically, this is using the total amount. Total amount is always using the principal plus the interest. Okay, not the interest rate, but the interest. All right, and the interest here is equal to PRT. So if you put this one P plus I is PRT, and then you factor the P out. So that's how you get this formula. Okay, so basically you can combine the I and then A equal to P plus I. You will get this formula. Okay, so that is the simple interest. And the compound interest, you will need to use this one. I usually just go ahead using the right-hand side here directly instead of using this middle one, because this middle one, you will need to find the I here. I here is R over M. Okay, and A is also the total amount. P here is the principal, right? And then R here is the interest rate. T here is the time T in years. So these are pretty similar. The only thing difference here is this M. Okay, what does M mean? M means compound M times per year. So if you interested is compound monthly, now M will be equal to 12, right? Because there's 12 months in a year. If you interested is compound quarterly, all right, and there are 4 quarters in year, so your M gonna be equal to 4. All right, so this M here is different according to the question. All right. So that is this one. I want to let you pay attention to that. Okay, so let's look at this one right here. What is R? All right, so we already have this one right here. The R here, if you look at this formula in here, right? How do you find the I? I here basically is just equal using R over M. Okay, R over M in here. And okay, so giving the this one right here, right? R here, this is 2.85. Well, actually, this is already R in here. Okay, this is already giving you the R, but this R here is per half year, not and then a half year. So what is the annual rate? Annual rate you just multiply by 2, right? So this is already giving you the R, so you don't really have to calculate the R. Okay, so number 3 here. Okay, R here is 2.85%, and this is per half year. This is per 0.5 years. So that means the 6 months. All right, and the annual is 1 year. So this is, or you can say this is 0.5 R equal to 2.8, right? And then you divide by both sides by 0.5, or R will be just this or multiply by 2, right? So divided by equal to multiply the reciprocal. So this is multiplied by 2. This will be 5.70. okay, percent. Or you can just write down 5.7%. All right. So that is just this is already giving you the R. Okay, so this is already giving you the R, so you don't have to find the R. You just have to convert it into a year instead of half year. All right. Number 4 here is a little bit graph. Okay. Discuss the similarities and the difference in the graph, of the future value A as a function of the time t. Okay, so if you read this graph, this is A here is the amount, this is the future value, future amount, right? And then this is after 1, 2, 3, after this one up to 8 years from this graph, right? You usually can enlarge this graph to look at that. Right now, I cannot really enlarge because I'll just put this one. If on the you always want to enlarge it so you can see that clearly, right? Some people send me the inbox, say, whatever the graph answer wasn't correct, but actually the answer was correct. But if you don't enlarge the graph big enough to see, sometimes it won't be clear that way. All right, so always enlarge this one, use that to enlarge it. In my case, I will use this, the zoom in here. Okay. All right. So we have a blue one. The interest rate is going at 4%, right? And then you can compare the red one. The interest rate is 8%. Okay. So if you have $1,000 to invest for 8 years, and the interest is compound monthly. Okay. So this one telling is compound monthly. Annual rate of 4%, 8%, and 12%. Okay, so the similar they all graph showing here is what the beginning they are all $1,000, right? So they all start with $1,000. Okay, and we can say showing A here. Okay, A here is increase. All right. A here is they all increased. All three, these three, they are all increased, right? And the difference at which A value, all right. So this one, you basically can just read the question. This one didn't ask you to really calculate for that, okay? So the similar here, they all start with 1,000 and then they're all increasing in here. All right. The difference here is 12% increase much faster, right? And the 8% is in the middle, 4% is increase the lowest one. All right. And you can basically you can estimate. Look at it. If you have a 10,000 after 8 years, this one is almost reaching 14,000, right? But if you have a 8% in here, look at it. You can do the calculation for this one, but you can also do the graph, right? From this graph read in here, this is more than 18,000 in here. So you can see the interest rate higher, it increases much faster, right? So one of them is 14,000. This one is almost like a 19,000. So that's almost $500 more, right? But if you increase at 12%, look at that. This is around like a 2,600 already. All right. So yeah. So the interest rate is making a huge difference in here. All right. How do you calculate the real amount? If you want to calculate the exact amount, now we're going to calculate. Okay, let me go ahead calculate one for you. So the compound here, we're going to using A equal to P times 1 plus R over M to the MT, right? This is a compound formula. Okay, not a simple one because this one telling you is a compound monthly at this rate. All right, so the principal here is 1,000. R here, we're gonna using the red one. We're gonna just calculate the red one. Okay, 8%. All right, so R here is 0.08. M here is a monthly, so that's 12. right? And then this is 12 times T here. We're gonna say 8 years, okay, after 8 years. All right, so we can put in a calculator to calculate this one, okay? This one, simple calculator will work, all right? 1,000 times, you will need to have a parenthesis, okay? I don't see the parenthesis in this one. All right, so I'm gonna using my other calculator for that because this is too simple. Right, let me on my calculator is the shortcut here. All right, using TI-84. Okay, so I have a 1,000 times parenthesis, right? 1 plus 0.08, okay, divide by 12. All right, and make sure I close the parenthesis, and I need to raise the power. So this is the power button, right? You have a 12 times 8. In this case, I also want a parenthesis in here. Even in my case, I don't have to have a parenthesis because my power actually going to the power position, right? But some of the calculator, if you power don't go to the power position, you still showing this head here. You definitely need a parenthesis. Okay. All right. So we hit enter. So we have 1892, and as I said earlier, for the bunny, we always round to 2 decimal points. So this will be 0.46. Okay. So 1892. 1892.46. Okay, so that is how much money you will have after 8 years. All right. So if you look at the graph, let's see, because this one, the graph, you cannot see that very clearly. Okay, so 1892, yeah, almost 1900. So I was estimate 1900 in there because the graph you can only estimate, right? But we do the calculation in here, yeah. So we will be able to calculate this one exactly is $1,892.46. All right, so that is how much. And we can see how much interest you earn. So we have a amount here, always using the principal plus the interest, right? So that's the total amount. This formula can use either can work for both simple and compound. Okay, both simple and compound total amount is always using the principal plus the interest. So if I want to find the interest, then I just using the amount minus the principal, right? So I have a 1892.46 minus my principal. I put $1,000 in there 8 years ago, right? So now I have a 892.46. Okay, so if I have $1,000 to invest for 8 years, and having an interest rate is 8% compound annually, I will be able to make $892.46 on the interest alone. All right, so that is this one, and same thing. Look at this one. This is almost double, right? I only invest 1,000 for 8 years, and I'm almost making $900 on the interest in there, right? So think about it. If you borrow this money, now this is the interest you will have to pay, right? So there's a saying called "rich people getting richer," because they have money to work for them, right? You can just put the money in a banker and you can collect the interest, that one. And the poor people getting poorer. Why is that? because now instead of the bank giving you the money, you have to pay bank money if you borrow the money that way, right? But when you borrow the credit card, the interest rate is much higher than 8%. All right, so you pay a lot of money on the interest alone. Okay, so that is this kind of things I found out this chapter is pretty interesting, right? Because you can actually calculate, for your own money that way. Okay. All right, let's see. Do we have any questions? Anyone has any questions? Okay, all right. We're gonna move on to number 5. Okay. Number 5 here. How long will it take money to triple if it is invested at a falling rate, right? One is 7.3% compound quarterly. Another one is 12.9% compound quarterly. All right, so we are still using the same formula, but this time we have to find the time t. Okay, so that's why this chapter here we have to use the logarithm. Okay, all right. So number 5, amount here, P here, amount, the total amount A here is equal to P times 1 plus R over M to the MT power, right? So it doesn't matter, it's a compound quarterly, so quarterly M here will be equal to 4. All right, and A here is R here is 7.3%, which is 0.073, right? 0.073 in here. Okay, and then we are looking at the time t. So you're gonna be triple. Okay, so invest in a falling rate. It said take money to triple. So what does triple mean? Triple, actually, it doesn't matter how much. If you have $100 at the beginning, triple will be 300. But we don't really care if you have 1 million, triple will be 3 million, right? So we can just using A here equal to 3P. Okay, and then P and P gonna be canceled out. So look at it, 3P equal to P times 1 plus R over M to the MT, right? And then P and P cancel out. So basically you can just have a 3 equal to 1 plus R, all right? And then we're gonna have a 0.073 over 4 to the 4T, okay? All right, so I can go ahead calculate everything inside in here, inside the parentheses. Okay, so 1 plus 0.073 divided by 4. Okay, I will need to keep all the decimal point because this is a very small. All right, so this is 1.01825. Okay, so what does that mean in here? That means I will have a 1.0185825 raised to the power of 40 will equal to 3, right? And we're gonna need to convert this one into logarithm. Or we can put the log on both sides, put a common log on both sides. So log of 3 will equal to log of 4, and I'm using the common log, okay? And that's 1.01825 to the 4t. And this 4t, so we're gonna have to use a little bit logarithm property. So this 4t can be taken to the front, become the coefficient, okay? So that's called a power rule. So we have a 4t times log 1.01825 equal to log 3. And then we can solve t this way. Okay, so t here will be just log 3 and then divided by 4 times log. And I'll show you how to calculate this one in a calculator. Okay, so now we're gonna have to have a calculator that can find a log. Okay, and you have this one right here. There's a log in here. Okay, there's a log in here. So this log of 3. All right, and make sure you close the parentheses before you divide it by. All right, and then this will have a. I need to use the parentheses in here because this got 2 numbers, right? 4 times log of 1.0825. And I need to close 2 parentheses for this side, right? One is to close the log here. Another one is close this one for my denominator. Okay, so make sure you have a 2 parentheses in here. You have a close 2 parentheses. All right, so that we are giving you all right, let's see. It's like do we calculate something? The answer doesn't look the correct answer. Okay, let's check this one right here. 3p 1 plus compound quarterly, so that's 4. Okay, and 4t. All right, so let's check this one more time. 0.073 divided by 4. Yeah, 0.1825. So that's right. Okay, and so we have a log 3 equal to 40 log this one. So t will be okay. So let's using log 3 first. Okay, let's calculate one more time. Log 3 divided by log 3 divided by log 1.0825. Okay, so we will get 13 point something. All right, and then we divide it by 4, right? Because we also have to divide it by 4. Okay, so I guess this one, but I'm kind of just think this number kind of a little bit doesn't make sense, not meeting the common sense to me. For the calculation procedure, this is correct, but in my common sense in here, it seems to need to be a little bit longer. Okay, in here, going to the 2 decimal point as needed. How long will it take money to triple if we invest in the following way? Okay, let's look at the formula sheet. Let's see if we copy the formula correctly. Okay, A is equal to P 1 plus R over M to the MT, which is right. Okay, I will check the answer a little bit later on in here because I will just think this one is the number is too small. Okay, you know, for 7.3 compound, Mr. Following rate, 7.3 compound quarterly. Okay, 12% compound quarterly. Okay, I will double check this one later on. All right, because in my opinion, I just thought like this is kind of a little bit too fast. You know, that should take a little bit longer for the triple. You know, that one. Okay, so I'll check the calculation or the number later on. All right, so number 6, let's look at this one. From the I is the rate per period, and then the N here is number of the period for the following annuity. Okay, so quarterly deposit 1,100 are made for 8 years into an annuity that pay 8.5% compound quarterly. All right, so now there's we're gonna talk a little bit more about the annuity later on. So there's a difference of the annuity and the compound interest. Okay, annuity is you like if you're trying to save for the retirement, right? And you put the money like $100 every month for the rest, like say 20 years, right? And how much money you're gonna get by the time you retire. So that is called annuity. And actually, if you borrow a car, not borrow a car, if you buy a car and you borrow the money, you actually paying an annuity to the car company or whatever the banker you borrow the money from, right? Because like the car costs $30,000, for example, and then you pay like say $700 every month for a number of years. So you have an equal payment every month for a certain amount of years to the bank or to the car dealer. So you're actually paying an annuity to them. All right. So it's similar to the one that you saving for the future. But this annuity is a little bit different. One is called a present value. Because if you want to buy the car, you don't have money, you actually, the money you need right now is the present money, right? So you have to have a money right now in order to buy the car if you don't have a loan. But instead, you have a loan in here. So the money you borrow right now is considered a present value. Okay. The one you're saving for the retirement, on the other hand, is called a future value. Okay, the future value of the annuity. And there's a two formula, a little bit different for the present value and the future value. Okay, let me show you the formulas in here. Annuity, okay, there's a future value of the ordinary annuity. So ordinary annuity always pay at the end of the month. That's called ordinary annuity. And that's the only annuity we're talking about in this book. And another one is the present value of the annuity, right? So for example, if you paying the car loan, you actually is using the present value, right? If you're saving for the retirement, you actually is saving for the future. So that's the future value of the annuity. And if you want to see, you're saving $100 a month for the next 20 years, how much money you're gonna have by the time you retire or you stop working. And that's the future value, right? So that's the future value. You're gonna use this formula to calculate. Okay. And I was showing you actually, instead of using the formula, the good news is with all this annuity, there's a built-in app in the calculator. You can actually use in the calculator to calculate the number instead of using the formula, right? But if you use the formula, you're gonna get the same answer anyhow. So, but I'll show you both ways, okay? One way is using the formula, the other way is using the app in the calculator, all right? The first question here is not that difficult because it asks a little bit simple question in here, okay? This one is only asking you the I and the N, all right? So this one, it didn't ask you the complicated one. This one is asking you the simple one. how much is the I? I is the compound per period. So we have an I formula. Here actually is pretty easy. Okay. So how much is the I? I here is using R over M. Okay. I. All right. So that is your I here. Okay. So your I here actually is just R over M. Okay. And then your N here is what? Your N here is M times T, number of the periods. So your N here is M times T. Okay. So these two are the very smaller formula to calculate. So this one is just asking you the smaller formula here. All right. So let's see how much is my I. All right, so we're gonna match this one. My I here is R over M. This one is compound quarterly, right? Quarterly deposit. So your M here will be 4. Okay. And this one is paying the 8.5% compound, 8.5% compound quarterly. So 8.5%. All right. So if you want to keep the percentage, you can just keep the percentage this way, right? This will be 8.5 divided by 4, so that will be 2.1. Let's see how much is that. 8.5 divided by 4. 2.124. 2.125. All right. And if you want to if you don't want to keep the percentage, you're gonna have to convert it into decimal point. Type of integer or decimal point round to 4 decimal places. So that means this one you cannot keep the percentage because it asks you to round to the decimal point. So this will be 0.02125. And it's round to the 4 decimal places. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm gonna have to round. All right, and then this one is 5, so I need to round up. Okay, 0.0213 in here. All right, so that is 4 decimal point. That's how you find the final answer. Okay. If you want to convert this one into decimal point to begin with, divided by 4, that's fine. You will get the same answer, right? Okay, so the N here will be just M times T. Okay, M here is 4 quarterly, right? And then T here is 8 years. Okay, so that's 32. So you're gonna compound 32 times in here. All right, compound 32 times in this case. All right, so that is number 6. Number 7 here. Use the future value formula. Look at that. So this one telling you to use the future value formula to find out if your future value is 4577, and then N here is 26. So how much is the payment? Okay. So that means you're gonna pay 26 times, and each time. All right, this one probably using the formula will be a little bit easier because this one giving you the I. All right, so how do I get a formula? Look at it, this compound and telling you using a future value, right? Okay, so that is the future value formula. Okay, and I'm gonna copy this formula to here. Okay, so my future value here is equal to the payment. PMT is the payment, okay, times the, and again, you can have that page of the formula. All right, because this formula is pretty long and very hard to remember. Okay, so we allow you to have this page of the formula on the test. All right, so we're gonna find this PMT is the unknown, and the future value here is 4577, right? And then the payment, okay? And then my I here is telling you is 0.06. And then N here is 26. Okay, minus 1 and divided by I, 0.06. All right, so the one thing here is you might go ahead and calculate this whole thing before you divide by. All right, so your payment gonna be 4577 divided by this parenthesis. So we're gonna go ahead calculate this whole parenthesis in here. Okay, so that is that look a little bit long, but actually calculation is not that bad for this one. Okay, so we're gonna have parenthesis, right? And then 1 plus 0.06, and then you have to raise it to the power first of 26. All right. Make sure you move down, or you can just go ahead calculate this one first before you minus 1. Okay, I like to do this in 2 places because it will carry the answer in here and then minus 1. All right, and this will be 3. So this I also have to divide by 0.06. Okay, divided by 0.6. All right, so I'm gonna keep a 4 decimal point. That should be good enough. Okay, so that's 59.1564. I round to this one up. So keep 4 decimal point should be pretty accurate. So I just need to divide by this one. Divide by 59.1461. Okay, and if you don't want to type this one, you can just flip this one over. Okay, and then multiply 474577. Okay, or you can just if you don't want this one, you can use 4577 divided by 59.1564. Okay, so giving you the pretty much similar answer. This one is even more accurate, but if you want to 4 decimal point or want to 2 decimal point, it's the same, right? So that we are giving you 77.37. Okay, so what does that mean in here? That means your monthly payment, right? So this giving you the monthly payment here is $77.37. Okay, so that is using the future value formula to find the payment. All right, so basically the future value formula is already given to you right here, right? You copy this one from the formula sheet and then just calculate the right hand side in here before you divide by the coefficient here. Okay, so that's how you calculate this one. Okay, number 8 actually is very similar to number 6. Okay, so this is calculate I and N. Calculate I and N should be very easy. Okay, so find the I, which is the rate per period, and the N is the number of the period for the loan that giving the annual rate in here, right? So quarterly payment of $1,050 are made for 14 years to repay a loan at 11.7 compound quarterly. Okay, so actually this really doesn't matter. We just need to find the I and N. All right. So 11.7% compound quarterly. How much is the I? All right, we have a formula earlier. Remember, we have an I here. We have an I here equal to R over M. So we can still using this formula in here. Okay, we can reuse this formula. So that's for number 8, right? I here is R over M. And then I here is 11.7%, or you can convert it into decimal point is 0.117 and compound quarterly, so divided by 4, right? And then you can go to calculate this one divided by 4. That should be really easy. 0.117 divided by 4, right? So that will be 0.0293 because it keep 4 decimal point, right? So this one you need to round up because it's 5. Okay. And then the n here is just n here is just MT, right? And M here is quarterly, so that's 4, right? And then T here is 14 years. So this multiply will be 56. Okay. All right, so that is how you do this one. So this one is similar. So for the I and N, it doesn't use the amount here, the quarterly payment, right? It just for the rate per period and the number of the period N. Okay, so those are the smaller calculation. Okay, number 9 here is solve for this question. Okay, so giving you the N is 24, I here, and then the payment here is 256. What is the PB? PB, which is the present value. Okay, so the present value. So your FB is the future value. All right, so you will need to go to find the right formula. Okay, so let's look at the formula we have earlier. All right, so right now, you want to find the present value, right? This is the FB is the future value. Okay, FB is the future, PB is the present. And this one, you probably want to use the formula because it's giving you the N, the I, the payment. So you just plug in this one in to do the calculation. It's easier than the calculator app because app, you will have to reconvert the I into the big I. So a little bit, according to the one in here using this formula is easier. Okay. And I'll show you, okay, so let's copy down this formula. Okay, the present value. Okay, so PB, which is the present value is the payment, PMT payment, times this one, the formula here is 1 minus 1 plus I to the negative N over I. All right, so we pretty much just plug everything in. This is 255 times the 1 minus 1 plus I. I here is 0.028 to the negative N here is 24, right? So we pretty much don't really have to think. We just plug the number into the calculator and then calculate. One thing is you have to be careful. How do you input a negative power? Okay, so this one is probably just using the calculator. We're gonna calculate the numerator first. So numerator is 1 minus, okay, and then parenthesis 1 minus. I don't know why it's showing the double in here, but it actually is only 1, right? 1 plus this one, actually 1 plus 0.028. Okay, and then this is power. The negative power, you're gonna have to use the one with the parenthesis. Okay, so that's negative 24. I think that something is wrong with my calculator, right? It's showing the number in here. It's showing a double number. Okay. Oh, that's why you get a syntax error. Yeah, I know it. Something was wrong. Maybe the calculator has something wrong. That's why it didn't calculate. Right. Okay, I'm gonna using my freebie. Actually, this actually is the this one. I'll fix that later on. Okay, I'm gonna use my emulator in this one. Okay, so that is the freebie. Okay, all right, so we recalculate this one in here. Okay, so we have a 1 minus, and then this is parenthesis, right? 1 plus 0.028, okay, to the power of 4. So look at it, now this calculator, when I hit the power, it didn't really go to the power position, but instead it's 1 line. So 1 line here, I'm gonna have to use the parenthesis, okay, and then using the negative 24, okay. All right, and I'm going to calculate my numerator first, okay, and then divide the denominator, which is 0.028. All right, and then I'm gonna times this coefficient. Okay, so you have to remember which one you did, which one you haven't. All right, and that will be the present value. Okay, so that is 4413.096, right? If you round to 2 decimal point for the bunny, we're gonna have a $4,413.10, so 10 cents. Okay, so that would be the present value in here. Okay, so solve this one. So you have this one, so that's your present value. If you have a payment, as $255, and you pay 24 times, right? So you totally pay 24 times, and then your interest in per period. This is not an annual rate. This is the interest on that pay period. Okay, you pay 24 times. It's 0.02028. So you present value, that means you borrow $4,413.10 to begin with. That's how you end up with this payment in here. Okay, all right. So last question. So for the test 2, you're gonna have 10 questions. Okay, because this is our review question, we only have 10. So you test are gonna have 10 questions. All right. So a sailboat cost $21,506. So you pay 10% down, right? And amortize the rest with equal monthly payment over 13 years period. So if you must pay 7.2% compound monthly, what is the monthly payment and how much interest you actually pay? Okay. So let's see. Okay, so we actually, so this sailboat cost this much, but you already pay 10% down. All right, you pay down 10%. So how much you have to borrow? Or you have to, the one you borrow is not $21,506, right? So you're gonna minus this 10% that you already paying down, because this 10% you don't have to pay the interest, you already paid that. So you can use 21,506 times 90%, because if you pay down 10%, you're gonna have to borrow the 90%, right? So you can see how much you borrow in here. Okay. 21,506 times 90%, which is 0.9. All right, so you actually, this is how much you have to pay interest on that. You borrow 19355.40. Okay, you borrow 1,900. Oh no, got it wrong. You borrow $19,355.40. So this is the present value. All right, because you do not have this much money right now. So the one you borrow, you will need to use the present value formula to calculate your monthly payment. Okay, if you're saving for the retirement, you're gonna use the future value to calculate your total amount by the time you retire. Okay. So now we're gonna using the present value for this one. Okay. And let's see which formula do we use. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we're gonna have to use the present value, right? So this is the fourth step, which is very important. You will need to use the present value. Okay, not a future value, using the present value. All right, so present value here is PMT, and then 1 minus 1 plus I to the negative n over I. Okay, so now that's why we tested you earlier, right? How do you calculate the n? How do you calculate the I? N here is equal to MT, I here is equal to R over M. So those are the formula you need to know how to calculate, because this is using I and N, all right? And I and N here, I here is R over M, and then N here is MT. So now you have to know what does the M mean, what does the R mean in here, right? So R here is the annual rate. M is the number of times you compound, right? And then the N here is number of the period, per period. Okay, all right, so let's see what we have here. We have this compound monthly, so we're gonna have a 7.2% divided by 12. Okay, so compound monthly, you can have a 0.072 divided by 2. All right, and then the N here, you're gonna have a 13 times 12, right? You have a 13 years, and then you compound monthly. Okay. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead, calculate this one, and then we can put it in a calculator. Okay, all right, so we have this one right here. Let's go ahead, calculate this one before. So we have a 13 times 12. Okay, and that's 156. Okay, so you're gonna pay 156 times because you pay 12 times for 13 years. So total number you have to pay is 156, right? And with this rate per period, you have a 0.072 divided by 12. Okay, so you're gonna have a 0.00620 in here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead calculate this one. So let's see how we put this one in here. We have a present value here is 19355.4, right? And then we are equal to the PMT. Okay, so that's the PMT. All right, a little bit harder to get everything in one page, right? I'm gonna write down in here. So present value is 19355.4. Okay, and then the PMT is the one we're trying to find, right? And then that will be 1 minus 1 plus I. I here is 0.006. Okay, to the negative n. N here is 156. Okay, and then over I here is 0.006. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go ahead calculate this whole thing, and then divide by this one later on. Okay. All right. So let's see how do I calculate this one right here. I will calculate my numerator first, right? 1 minus the parenthesis 1 plus this one will be just 1.006. Okay. To the power of negative, because this is negative. So I need to use the parenthesis. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead calculate my whole numerator first, and then divide the 0.0006. Okay, so that will give me you this one right here. All right, so I have a 101.118. Okay, all right, I'm gonna just round to 4 decimal point. All right, and all I can just go ahead and do the reciprocal for this one, and then I will just multiply this one. 19355.4. Okay, so now we're giving you the payment here. The payment here is 1914.14. Okay, so you're gonna have to pay oh, hold on. Oh, I missed the 1 decimal point in here. Look at it. So let's recalculate the last step. So because I have a 1, this is supposed to be 19355.4, right? So I missed the 1 decimal point. Or I can just put a decimal point back here because I missed 1 decimal point. Okay, so this is supposed to be right here on 4.1. All right. Or I can just go ahead and recalculate this whole thing. I can just using 19355.4. Okay, so make sure I have the decimal point in here. And then divide by 101.118. I don't have to input the last number in here. Oh. All right, so this come out a little bit different because I wrong to the decimal point in here, right? Instead of okay, but this is close enough. 1.30. All right, that should be close enough in here. Okay. So just a few cents different in this one right here because I using a reciprocal, which is much more accurate in the previous one. Okay. So for the last one here, I was showing you an app in here. So for the last one, because you can actually using let me show you the app in the calculator. Okay. This last one right here, you can actually, there's an app in the calculator you can use for the annuity. So this is present value, future value. From the present value or the future value, they are all annuity. So you can go to the app, which is right here. Let me see, where's the app? It's a little bit harder. Okay, you can go to app right here, APPS. Okay, this is formula, it's a bit small. Go to apps, and this one you have a finance, okay? And then you just go to the finance, and then go to the TBM solver. Even this freebie has that one as well, okay? So let me show you where to find this one. Go to apps, okay? And then the finance, and then using the TBM solver in here. All right, so this big N here is the same as our little n in here, actually, okay? So this N here is 13 times 12, okay? And then you will have a 156, which we already calculated earlier. This I here is not the same as the little I, okay? This I here is the compound per year, the annual rate. So this big I here is the annual rate. The good news is this annual rate is in a percentage. So you're gonna just hit a 7.2 in here. Okay. The reason I didn't ask you to calculate this one earlier because this one we do not know the annual rate. So you're gonna have to go to calculate the big M, which is a little bit tricky. All right. But this one is already giving you the annual rate. So you can using the app here because this one already match. Okay. Present value. Okay. So present value, you're gonna have to input the present value in here, the one you need to borrow, not the original one. The one you need to borrow here is 19355.4. Okay, and then the payment is the one we're gonna come back to do that in here. Future value you want to pay you want to be zero, right? After 13 years payment, we're going to pay it off. Okay, and then that's payment per year, which you compound monthly, so you're gonna have a 12. Okay, and then the compound per year also compound per year is also 12. And we use the ordinary annuity, so the payment method always at the end of the month. So that's in the default, right? And then we just need to come back to solve this payment. Everything is already done, input correctly. So we're gonna just need to solve this payment. And this alpha enter is solve. So if you want to solve, it's the green color. So we're gonna need to have alpha enter. And look at that. That is the number, very exact number we have earlier. Okay, so this is even more accurate than my estimate value, right? This is the one exactly. The reason the payment is negative because you have to pay out of your pocket. So in the calculator, the payment is always in a negative number, okay? Because you have to pay out of your pocket. So that's $191.41, right? That's the one we have earlier. If we use the rounding to 4 decimal point, we come out a few cents different. Okay, but that should be close enough in here. So that we're giving you this one very, very quick and easy to, instead of the formula, right? So if you have an interest rate in here, and if you want to solve for any one of these, you can use input the rest of them and then come back to use this one to solve anything. Okay, so I'm showing you one more time in here. Go to apps. All right, I'm showing you the big one. So this big one should be okay. See, let me see the big calculator. Okay, I'm trying to see if my big calculator work. That's giving you a little bit clear. No, not too many things in here. Hard to see my shortcut. All right. I think one thing is the big calculator and the small calculator work the same. Okay, so I just want to show you this one a little bit clear. TI 184. This one right here. Okay, so if you go to this big calculator, which is very similar, okay, there's an app in here, right? So if you look at the app in here, apps, same thing, there's an app in here. This one got much more functions, okay? But the first one is finance. So you just go to here, enter, and then using the first one, TBM solver. Okay, that's the one we want. And then we can just input all these things we have earlier, right? So we have a 12 times 13. Okay, and the interest rate here was same thing as the one we just did earlier. Okay, 19, so that's 19355, 19355.4. Okay, and the payment, which is we don't know, we're gonna come back to solve. Okay, usually you won't, you have to input something to let you go through, right? And then the future value will be 0. Compound is compound monthly, so everything is correct. All right, so I'm gonna just come back to solve for payment. So alpha enter is, oh, I forgot to fix the interest rate. Our interest rate here is not a 4%. Our interest rate here is 7.2%. Okay, and then we just come back to solve. We enter. Oh. All right, let's see which one. Oh, I forgot the present value in here. That's 19193. Okay. 19355.4. All right. And then you can always come back to resolve. Okay, so now it's correct. All right, so $191.41, right? So that is the same thing as this one. Okay. So yeah, there's an app in here, but if you use the app, you have to recognize what the app means, right? What does all this symbol mean in here? Okay, so this big N here is how many times you compound totally. Okay, how many payment you have totally. And then this I here is the interest rate. This interest rate is in a percentage. So we need to input the same format as this one. Okay, and then using the alpha enter to solve any one of these. Okay, all right, so hopefully that help. If like I said, if this boat you have if you don't have a 10% payment right here, right? So if you don't do the down payment, we can calculate how much is there. Okay, 21,21506 right? If you do not have a 10% down payment, how much you have to pay monthly? All right, so now you have to pay $12.68 each month. Okay, so if you do not have a 10% down payment, so you can always come back here to change that and recalculate in here. All right, so hopefully that help. And I will check one of the question earlier. My calculator might have a little bit issue earlier. If I have a correction, I will repost a video in there. Okay. All right, so that will be it for today. Okay, I know you haven't done the test one, most of you, but we do have one student already finished the test one. So that's really good. Okay. For the rest of you, you will need to finish your test one first. It's still, I put a chat in here, right? It is still by the 15th. Okay, for the test one. All right. Okay, so any questions? We'll stop the recording.